Now we know, Trevor, that the same Richarlison cannot turn out for Tottenham in the opening game of the new season. The FA have banned him retrospectively for the now infamous flare-throwing incident when he was at Everton. Is that the correct precedent to set? Now, Mr. Jordan already had his say in this when it happened back in May. So too did Danny Murphy.
He's celebrating a goal with his own fans. He's lost himself in the moment, but he's certainly not meant to cause any harm. There's no bad intent there.
I think it's a very strong precedent to be setting to go retrospective on this. I mean, it was ill-advised to throw it back in the crowd. I mean, we can go into the question as to why these pyrotechnics are appearing inside the stadiums and what's going on, and that's a different discussion. It was ill-advised, but it was in the moment, and I think it would be incredibly harsh to feel the need to go retrospective on it. If the referee sent him off because there's been precedent in the previous examples with Jamie Carragher 20 years ago, I'm not entirely
sure. What was wrong then is wrong now, surely.
But the referee didn't apply it, and I think it would be incredibly harsh on any player, whether it was an Everton player, a Manchester United player, a Liverpool player, whoever it may be, that a panel was convened to go retrospective on a circumstance that the referee in the game didn't attach the relevance to.
So, Simon, harsh or not, they've done it. Yep. Have you changed your view on it in any way?
Have I changed my view on the fact that I think it's harsh? No. But I've also come to the view that if the rules are the rules are the rules, them's the rules, you know, and you have to possibly look at the ideals behind it and say, well, maybe some of the rules need to be changed. The argument at the time, I think, would have been mired in Everton. It might have been an artificial influence that I allowed myself to bite down on, was that Everton were in the middle of a relegation battle. Correct. And losing him at that particular time would have been incredibly damaging to the football club. Now losing Tottenham losing him has less impact, but it's a slightly hypocritical argument I'm advancing, because if you lose him, you lose him. The rules are the rules. So I advance an argument based upon a sort of empathy with Everton's position, but Richarlison shouldn't have been throwing flares back into the fans anyway.
Well, that's what surprised me about you taking it at the time.
I'm sure there was a bigger context. I'm sure I expanded upon it.
I think the FA have dealt with it well. I think, like you said there, if he would have got sent off there and then, Everton right in the midst of a relegation battle, I think his adrenaline's rushing. Yeah. He's just scored a goal. He's absolutely pumping. It's a big goal that he scored. I think it would have been wrong to send him off there. But actually, when you look at what he's done, he has endangered some fans. He didn't mean it, but I think the FA have looked at him and thought...
Didn't mean what? Didn't mean to throw it?
Yeah, I don't think he's thinking about the harm.
It was literally his adrenaline's running.
Here's where the real conundrum comes in. The referee should have dealt with it.
In what way?
Well, in whichever way the referee determined, it shouldn't need a panel to sit after the game. The referee saw it. It had been visible to him. He knows the laws of the game. He knows the rules himself. If he had dealt with this in that moment... It
wouldn't have got to this retrospective. But would you applaud the referee if he'd sent him off?
If it's within the rules of the game and the referee made a decision at that moment in time, I was arguing about retrospective penalties and retrospective involvement. And the argument I used about Jamie Carragher 20 years earlier was based upon the fact that the referee again abdicated responsibility and it was put into a situation where someone else took control of it. The referee's there, the referee's in the moment, he knows more about it from an objective and a subjective point of view than a panel looking at it in isolation. He should have taken control of the situation.
You're saying he shouldn't have done that?
I think clarification needs to be put in place so the referees know exactly...
If he'd have booked him, they wouldn't have convened a retrospective panel.
Correct. But is it a red card offence now? I think that needs clarification with the FA, with the referees, so they know that if this happens in the future, they know exactly what to do.
But they must know it's a red card. They must know, because if the panel were operating by the same laws that the referee is, then the referee must know this too.
Exactly.
And the referee abdicated...
So the referee bottled it and he didn't take responsibility.
That would be my view based upon looking at it from
that is almost like when we're talking about VAR, and VAR has been separate from the atmosphere and from what's at play. Listen, if he would have got sent off for that, I think it would have been harsh.
It comes under violent conduct in the rules.
It could have been a dangerous situation, because if that goes into the crowd and injures someone or maims them or whatever it does, then I think... But Richarlison, listen, looking back, Richarlison wished he wouldn't have done that. But he was in the moment, it was there, he just chucked it back towards the fans. I don't think he was chucking at anyone in particular.
Simon, how come it's harsh then but not now?
We can inflate it up. Also, but just going off on a different piece, the argument that we have about flares being in the stadium in the first place, it would have been some sort of irony, wouldn't it? If he'd have thrown it back at Everton fans, got banned as a result of it, Everton had suffered of it, and the fans were arguing with us saying, hang on a second, you miserable old curmudgeons, we should be able to bring flares inside the stadium. Well, here's an example of why you possibly shouldn't, because a player's been thrown a flare at, he's thrown it back at you, and the game's rules say way that these things have to be consequenced.
Yeah, of
So
course.
go to your question again. Is it harsh? What's harsh?
I think he has to take accountability for the flair.
Getting
hurt Everton.
Yeah.
Well, it is, because I think that the nature of the offence could have been handled better on the day if the referee had dealt with it and said, right, well, actually, I'm going to yellow card this player.
Who's the referee? We'll find that out. We'll look at it.
If he'd have yellow carded the
Why?
player...
Do you know what, Simon? You saying that, it struck me as odd that the referee didn't.
The referee
Act on
didn't.
the
We
day.
can't go back on
Because
that.
if it's in the rule book, it's violent conduct. He should have acted
the
on
FA
the
have
day.
got
And
responsibility.
that would have taken away this retrospective argument, and no one would be saying the FA are a bunch of this, that, and the
But
others.
that didn't happen.
They're enforcing the rules. They shouldn't have to be subjective. They should be objective. If the rule says you can't do this, they
But
can't
that's
turn
what
around and
I'm
say,
not
well,
sure
actually, Everton are in a relegation battle. We should feel sorry for them. They have to deal with it in real time.
And I think that's why Richarlison, in the end, has had to take accountability for his action. He's been given a one-game ban. It's obviously he's moved clubs to Spurs now. The person I'm looking at is Kulusevski, because he's got a great chance to start the season for Spurs and keep Richarlison out the side, and he must be thinking, I'm into the start with, it's mine to lose.
I think in the context of looking at it as emotive human beings involved in the best interests of the game, I think it's harsh, because there shouldn't be smoke bombs in the stadium anyway, and there wasn't an intent. There was no malice behind his situations by the laws of the game. And we're talking about situations in laws across sport. We're talking about Kyrgios not being made accountable for laws, and people wondering if he's going to bring the game into disrepute. Well, enforce the laws. If you don't want him wearing red trainers on a tennis court, stop him from coming on the court with a tennis court and suffer the consequences of people saying, "Hang on a second, you shouldn't be doing that to a player."
But
in this instance, the referee should have intervened and gone.
Kevin Friend was the referee.
He should have dealt with it
there and then. Ironically, and we think this is a case, look, from Everton, still nobody's been pulled up for it. No fans are arrested for the fan that threw the flare onto the pitch in the first place.
Yeah, but it's difficult to pick out an individual fan who threw that flare.
Is it?
I know there's CCTV, but
CCTV?
Yeah, you've got a face. All the faces might look the same. So how are you going to get his name from unless he's got a criminal
You would
record?
like to think, Trevor, that Richarlison will learn from it, though. I mean, there's a message there. Fans throwing flares onto any empty pitch, it's very different to throwing a flare in the direction of a crowd of people. All right, it didn't land in the crowd of people.
Okay, well, don't throw flares on the pitch in the first place.
Of course.
And it's not empty either.
I mean, wearing flares is something you have a particular penchant for, but notwithstanding that we shouldn't be bringing flares inside a football stadium.
I do. I like the way they kind of flow around my ankles. But at the end of the day, do you think this is going to set a precedent, Simon? Do you think at the end of the day, the authorities will think about this and think, right, what should have happened that didn't happen?
Well,
I'm with you. The referee
the referee should be held accountable for it. The referee should be told. But then again, you hold players accountable. Don't take your shirts off when you've scored a goal, because you could get yourself red carded or yellow carded, depending on where you are.
So
don't stop them, does it?
Well,
they still do it
in most cases.
But they still do it.
So if you've been booked, you're not going to take your shirt off if you score a goal.
Well, someone did the other day, didn't they?
If it's the last seconds of the game, why not?
Oh, okay then.
That's right. Have you ever worn flares, Trevor, incidentally?
I've took my shirt off when I've scored a goal, but that was before the rules were in.
Yes, he has worn flares.
You'll have worn flares.
I've never worn flares.
I wore flares all in the 90s.
But I might have worn flares when they're appropriate. You're wearing flares now.
Yeah,
they're not appropriate.
Nothing wrong in that. Nothing wrong in that.
Jim White and Simon Jordan. Monday to Friday mornings from 10 on AM, on DAB, via the talkSPORT app and on your smart speaker. talkSPORT.